the Miro table doesn't record either, guys, just so you're aware, right? It's just our ugly mugs, unfortunately. Or fortunately, it depends. Right. Contributions for the next meeting. I just want to go over that. Darshan was to build and contribute to the customer journey gathering. He's not built or contributed to the customer journey, so he's not go around to that. Do you not have access, Sheldon?
I thought I did from the last time,
well.
but I am not sure now if maybe I used the wrong. Okay, let me just try it again. Don't worry about it for now, Lee.
I'll try.
I'll let you know. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. If it's still not working, let me know. Yeah. So I don't think Darshan contributed to it or built it, so that's taking a back seat for now with him. David, contribute customer journeys, which you have, and prompted me as to why the phone wasn't working, which is really helpful when we're trying to gather some info. Apologies for that, guys. It's timed out. And no also draft a data classification policy example to share, or it was anonymizing one, I believe. Did you manage to go around to that, or no go?
Yeah, so I'm mostly done with that. I should be able to share that today with the anonymization. Cool. Because we had completed our draft, so I have a version I can share. So let me have till the end of today, and I can share that. The only comment I have, and I mean, we gave this to the team that supported us in building this, is it seems a little bit overly complex,
right?
Because it's part of a data governance framework, and the other reference documents they referenced in here, but I don't have them available to share. So
they're not open, are they?
No, the data classification policy, but I've kind of left the references in just so that it kind of also gives some context to, let's say, how complex this is. We were supported by the by one of the big four to help us pull this together. So
no problems, that's okay, mate. So we'll have that by the end of the day-ish, if not next week at some point.
Yeah, it should be ready. I'm just kind of doing a final data validation.
Cool. Ed, you contributed to the customer journey stuff. Thanks very much, mate. Jason is a bit MIA, but I know he's traveling a lot at the moment. We're still waiting for consolidation of global crime maps and frameworks from him. Oscar, contribute to the customer journeys, which you have done, and bring a model to use to look at the different facets of customer journeys, appreciating the dimensions and structuring the view and layers impact in it. That sounds like a sentence you said and not me. Is that what we're seeing on the screen here, mate?
Yep, that's what we've got on the screen there. A little footnote to just kind of highlight what you're staring at.
To support, yeah, that's great, mate. Thank you very much for that. We'll unpack that a bit more depth. Mr. Jump is still on a different time zone in his mind, even though he's back in SA. He's been in Australia for a few weeks, and Billy's not being able to contribute to the customer journey piece or update the version 2, which we'll get after this, I suppose. Any preferences to where we go? So for me, for this one, for this particular session, I want to try and give as much time back as we can, right? Instead of utilizing the hour unnecessarily. As this in front of us, should we go through the customer journey model here, Oscar? Is that okay with you? And then I'll share the raw gathering of information that we've got of customer journey so far, and then I'll create a pack then afterwards with all of this in there. Is that okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. Over to you then, mate.
Okay, so I think the first point of departure is that what you're kind of staring at there is practically commonly used when you're designing user journeys, CX, UX type of work. So it's nothing fundamentally new. But the thinking was as follows. If one kind of appreciates what people are doing and inherently also overlay what they are thinking when they go through a specific process, along with the emotions, you can start identifying where the exploitation potentially, or where there's deviation from expected behavior. Now, at the bottom, you'll note that there's a layer that kind of talks to experience, and there's kind of 3 elements highlighted around that, which is once again commonly used from a CX UX perspective. But in my mind, when I think about how people are being emotionally kind of pushed into a corner quite often, when it comes to fraudulent transactions or trying to kind of exploit them, you should in theory start picking up that they are behaving outside of the expected norm, if you know what that expected norm is. I think that's the real trick here. It's being able to figure out that you can actually frame what that expected norm is based on how people should be thinking or feeling, or whatever other dimension we'd like to kind of overlay. And then that reference point can then kind of be reused as a point of measure. So perhaps let me just kind of check. Does that roughly make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, a while back, I had a chat to one of the Deloitte partners in the security space, and I asked them the question, do you guys even contemplate thinking about process behavior as a future installment that you're going to be evolving to? Because if you think about it, most of our controls are very technical in nature. And so unless you kind of know that this box is supposed to, I don't know, start archiving data at a specific point in time, and you kind of appreciate when it does it, it's falling within a time frame. We don't do much more from a behavioral perspective outside of the stuff that's coming in now from artificial intelligence. But on the business process side, there's a business interpretation that one can kind of overlay onto the process, which you can peg into an annual cycle, which already would start giving you an understanding around how that process is supposed to behave, which is not something that has actually been tapped in. And talking to this guy, it's also not something that they've contemplated tapping into. So perhaps it's a space that we can kind of provide some guidance or explore, or just bin it if it doesn't work for us.
Anyone have anything to add on that model as an example?
Not from my side, just to agree with Oscar. That's one of the questions I asked the guys in the retail space as well. How can you keep on evolving if you don't look at something that can go wrong? So yeah, thanks, Oscar.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. It's a very nice framework that where it breaks it down. Some of the areas that I've never even thought of how to look at this, but this is very insightful, something to think about going further, definitely, and to be applied in other areas. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Cool. The form was built so we could look at existing or relatable customer journeys to talk to the opportunity of fraud and crime vulnerabilities, what potential malicious fraud activity could occur. Yeah. So we were looking for an example, an overview of one. And myself and Darshan broke it up then into multiple choice to give us a little bit more structure to it.
Trying to reflect on what one's trying to get out of it. In my mind, there's kind of 2 scenarios where you've probably got your highest level of fraud risk to manage. One is where you're trying to establish a level of trust of the customer. So that initial onboarding type of, or when there's a change to individual's profile of sorts. And the other one is typically when you're doing transactions. And I was wondering if those aren't distilled enough to kind of use as optics to then zoom in to say, okay, if you're going to be looking at doing a transaction, what are the specifics that you're trying to get into? Because, you know, if I judge the work that we're doing here, we're trying to come up with a framework that allows it to be reusable within different industries and contexts as such. But I think those themes are kind of universal enough to be able to reuse.
Got it.
I don't know what the other guys think.
Yeah, I agree, Oscar. I think even from our perspective and some of the use cases or journeys that we were looking at was also around, so it's kind of like our customers are interacting with us on a certain channel. That could be a physical channel or a digital channel. And I'm now thinking of our banking context, you know. So how do we effectively strongly authenticate and identify the customers that we know that it is who they are, who they say they are. And that's done through a combination of what we kind of maybe call prevention controls at the channel level. So we kind of check in the device they're coming in on, if it's on a digital channel, and we're doing some type of triangle of trust to tie the device to their customer record, to their, you know, how we can identify them from a digital ID, let's say, perspective. And so you kind of got that layer. And then, like you mentioned, once we've identified the customer, so in the process of identifying them, we may, if we pick up any anomalies there, we may want to, you know, do certain types of actions, whether it's a step up or whether it's some type of push request. And so that's another layer of authentication, let's say. And then once we're happy with that, then there would be, okay, now we've identified them, what are they allowed to do? You know, so then it comes to the transactional level type checks, you know. So we may have not picked up on certain flags or alerts or triggers during the channel, or, you know, during the identification or authentication step, but we may pick up things at a lower level when the transaction actually is occurring. So yeah, and yeah, I think one of the challenges we also find is that we've got various touch points. So we've got physical channels, we've got digital channels, we've got staff assisted channels where we've got bankers assisting customers, and we've got self-service channels, and they don't all they don't all have the same level of authentication and identification. Obviously, on our digital channels, that's much stronger because we've got the concept of a digital ID. But when we talk about things like ATMs, we're still using and relying heavily on the card, and that's a major flaw, I think, because our card fraud is quite high. So yeah, sorry, I was just adding a little bit more detail, but yeah, I agree with what you're saying there.
Thanks, Sheldon.
No, I was saying the other use cases, are they also related to sort of like business email compromise?
2 secs. BC. Yeah, BC. Email account takeover for impersonating finance staff who approve release funds. And then fraud by our partners in managing the funds we give them. To third party there.
Yeah.
And this is more on the MFA front, right?
Yeah. There's so many entry points. But like Oscar said, a lot of it makes sense altogether. So you can't really take it apart. Just a suggestion, maybe looking at the 3 to 4, 5 question way of doing things. So the people don't have a lot to look at to answer, and they need to answer according to what their first choice was.
Yeah. Maybe leave it a bit more open-ended then.
Yeah.
Cool.
And maybe me also oversharing. One of the investigations that I did before moving on, a customer was able to manipulate the return policy within the app and bought something for R5 and got returned 35,000 Rand.
Oof.
So, yeah, like Sheldon said, there's so many entry points. It's not funny, and it's not always what we will think about. It's something else.
Rian, was that a sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Was that a technical issue with I'm assuming with the app development, some kind of bug, or as
Yes.
opposed to a business process failure? That's more of a technical. That sounds like something went wrong that enabled some validation control that enables the customer
Yeah.
to
Yeah, and
get more
also,
back.
yeah, and also the financial control wasn't really followed, because if with the correlation that should take place within the database, if ID1 does a refund, there should be a refund on the request for ID1. And this just kept on going until someone eventually noticed there's too much money leaving the company instead of coming in on that same ID.
So it talks to, I think, two pieces. The first piece is the development, code validation, making sure that that type of error doesn't occur or can be tested for. And then the second piece is the business control around let's say customer spend is X and the refund is not in alignment with what their purchases were, kind of thing.
Totally, yes.
So I dropped off a little bit there, Lee. Apologies, but I think from my side, the use cases are a little bit different. The email account compromise, I think, is probably an entry point, and most of us will experience something like that as one of the potential options of entry. But the other one is more around, because we don't really have customers, but when we do disbursements, when I was talking to our business teams internally, one of the things that bother them and that they worry about, it's more around, well, how do we validate that money that we are dispersing is then used for what it was meant to be used for? It's a little bit different context, but certainly in our line of business, it's the same. We're in the business of dispersing funds to do good for people. So if somebody, some malicious actor says, I want to build a school, and then they go and buy a super yacht, then how do we kind of validate that kind of behavior?
Yeah,
it's a little bit.
It is different, but then if you
Sorry.
look at the loans division of any FSI, the reason for the loan is never validated, is it, or verified after. It's pretty straightforward, isn't it, to apply for a loan for home improvement. I'm just using examples of the UK, right? For home improvements, I got to take that out and taking you guys for a nice dinner. That's what we could have done instead, which is Great. But yeah, never verified after or validated after, right? I think where's that process to this? Or as long as the payments or repayments have been made, does it matter? I don't know.
Yeah, and then there's a whole nother dynamic to it, and that is particularly in philanthropy, I guess. But so let's say we build out a program, and our partner says we do need 5 million a year for 5 years.
Yeah.
And they say, this is a bucket for staff costs, this is a bucket for ops expenses, this is a bucket for whatever, marketing. And then while they originally have said, look, we do need this money, and they take the money, and then they let's say they overinflate the salary increases year on year for 5 years kind of thing. There's also that, at which point, and I think in corporate it's a lot more black and white, whereas in our space it's less black and white. That is, at which point is it just somebody being greedy and taking something which they had kind of loosely defined, but then there becomes a moral or ethical discussion versus, okay, now we are actually defrauding the program. We're getting money in, and we're buying Bentley Continentals instead of Land Cruisers kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Oscar, do you want to come in, mate? Oh, sorry, Dave. I don't know if you broke up or stopped then. Did you finish?
I kind of had finished. Yeah, thanks, Lee.
An organic end to the sentence. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, the first example in terms of, are you dispersing it to a bunch of people who are going to be buying a yacht or fund a terrorism group or whatever? It's kind of, in the financial services space, we talk about knowing your customer. So I think it's having the ability to apply something to that extent to help minimize your risk exposure. It doesn't guarantee necessarily that you can eradicate the issue. But if I look at especially how these KYC solutions are evolving, where the guys are thoroughly harvesting whatever's being publicized about these individuals on the open web, it definitely starts bringing in a bit of a different dimension, and those kind of contextual realities that are being highlighted around people, to me, also kind of ties back to a dimension to this conversation that if we just look at it from a tech perspective, you're kind of limited to how much you'll see. But if you can kind of bring in some of these other dimensions to it, it paints a bit of a different picture, which could inform you to either be a bit more cautious, or it actually lets the alarm bells go off. I was talking to a guy who he's kind of in this game, and he was actually sitting in front of the Western Cape government and sharing with them what the solution can do. And they punched in a name of a company that they're doing business. Actually, the founder's name of a company that they just awarded a tender to. And he said to him, well, are you aware that he's just stolen 200 million from guys kind of next door? And they said no, because in their due diligence, they didn't even bother actually just looking at what's being publicized around this individual on the open web. But I think it's definitely an angle that's starting to emerge as something that almost before you engage with anyone, you do want to just do a bit of a background check. Thanks.
There's RAN monitor as well, isn't there, Oscar? I think.
Yeah.
I'm messaging you here privately just so I remind myself. I think there's an opportunity to bring we've not brought a guest speaker into the project yet, but I think there's a nice opportunity to bring that example in. So a very idiot's guide, Oscar will probably give a lot more in-depth version of what this is, right? But artificial intelligence gathering a profile of anyone who registers as a customer with you, whether that's B2C or B2B, right? And I think it's a smart piece of tech, and it's leverage. What list is it? It's the sanctions listings globally, isn't it, Oscar? That is drawing the data from predominantly, but not limited to that, right? I've not seen the tech work, but I've not seen it in action, but I've just got the concept of it. It might be worth us bringing that angle in, because I think the KYC bit, the data entry, of the customer journey is critical, right? Because if that bit is done right, the alleviating of any risks after that can be somewhat reduced. Pressure reduced off that, as long as that initial bit is done. But it's that revisiting of that KYC, isn't it? Like, I've gone through it recently in the UK where sanctions were put on Russia. And I simply, so the guys at the part of the main group will recall that we were going to fund scholarships back about 12-13 months ago with Anna and Enclose. Anna from Know Before and Enclose, and we were going to set up a fundraising. It took me a year to open that account because they wanted to revisit what I was doing as a business. It was exactly the same, because I couldn't open a Rand account, and there was no point me raising funds in Rand and converting them to pounds. That would have been very counterproductive. I wanted to try to do Rand to Rand, right? But yeah, I think that took a good sort of 9 months and actually burnt that candle out, right? So it was quite detrimental to the mission that we were trying to achieve. But yeah, I suppose it's revisiting that KYC bit. I don't know. Would you guys be comfortable in bringing in like that sort of conversation from Rand Monitor? So they've got, like, Ross would do it, wouldn't he, Oscar? I imagine.
Yeah, no, Rocher will do it for us.
Rocher.
Yeah, and you know, having seen it in action, it looks almost simpler than talking to Chat GPT. The other thing that I kind of appreciated was the guys have solved the problem so that a one-man business can actually afford doing these checks. It's really a cheap solution that gives you the benefit, because the intent was, you know, they kind of look at how rife this is, make it easy and accessible for everyone. As opposed to, if you look at what it costs to actually put in one of these global KYC solutions, yeah, it's not within anyone's means necessarily to be able to do that. You really need to be a big financial institution to be able to afford those kind of engagements.
For a wider view on the KYC piece, Oscar, what's the other solutions out there, the global examples you're referring to?
So there's a
If you know off the
company
top of your head.
Yeah, so there's a company in SA that's called Batelier that actually provides the KYC solutions, which is, I think it's a German company that have kind of amalgamated buying up all the solutions. Trying to remember what that thing's called. But anyway, and so typically they have their Bloomberg feeds, and there's kind of a series of these kind of companies sitting behind these applications that provide data feeds that actually go out and scour the world and try and concoct databases full of information that you are able to actually run your scans. But just kind of in proportion, you know, if you're going to calculate what it costs you to do a single scan on one of the more global solutions, you kind of have the 150 Rand mark. If you kind of look at the RON solution, that's like, I think it's sub 5 Rand.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be signing a multi-million Rand contract, spending $5 just figuring out if the guy, you need to be worried about it or not, it's probably worth your while.
Makes sense. Ed, you're waving.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that's very interesting use cases for the KYC side, and you mentioned a bit of AI. Are you seeing any use cases in the space of deep fakes being used for fraudulent activities?
Like, I've seen the publicized, so there's a financial advisor essentially to the government in the UK called Martin Lewis. He has like primetime TV show on how to save money on your bills and things like that. He was deep faked or they used his brand and his name as a deepfake to convince people to invest on this Elon Musk something or other, like really pulled, and so many people fell for it because like he's the go-to guy. He'll do comparisons for all the best savings websites, all the best junior ISAs, you know, everything. Everyone goes to that straight away, and there's a big issue obviously in the UK and globally with cost of living at the moment. So he does a lot with energy bills and utility bills, so a lot of people sort of bought into that, and he had to publicly, it was all over national news and everything, publicly come out and say it wasn't him and all that. So I've seen, from a consumer standpoint, I've seen that as an example, but I don't know if you guys have experienced anything locally and within your entities, possibly a bit more close to home, or not yet.
I don't know of any offhand on our side, but yeah, I can find out from our team. I haven't heard anything to in that regard, Edison.
Yeah,
Oscar, I'm
'cause
not
it
sure on
made
your
me-
side.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
yeah.
nothing this week.
Or shall we say nothing that we've detected, right? Because I mean, right
Yeah.
now it makes sense for them to be used to sort of bypass all of the rules and you know that you currently have in place. So if you're not aware of them, you won't really detect them. So, but
True,
yeah, it's an interesting
true.
one.
But just kind of building on this conversation, perhaps from a fraudulent perspective, it's not about that something that we can kind of bring into our thinking, into the framework. It's not about necessarily identifying where it's being applied beforehand, but potentially where it could be applied. So if you've got a process, and I'll just color that in with a bit of an example. Let's say we want to do robo advice, but your robo advice kind of takes on a bit of a personality. And so in your customer engagement process, there's a point where they start talking to this thing. That in itself could be by kind of knowing that, then itself could be an area where you actually want to put in additional controls because you're applying that kind of technology, or it's a point that could easily be exploited by that type of technology. And almost kind of proactively identifying where artificial intelligence could be deployed, even if you haven't necessarily done it, so that you can actually then try and put down controls that allows you to actually spot where there's behavior outside of the norm.
Agreed. So I've just posted that example into the group as well, so you guys can see that. I think what would be useful for the next time then, as a bit of a focus, hi Rian, is that
Hi guys.
if we, so I'm gonna work on gathering the rest of the input on what's outstanding up until this point, and we'll do a bit of a feature on KYC then, for the next meetup in a few weeks' time, and I'll open it up as well to the wider community outside of this small working group here, and gather some perspectives on that. I'll have to check availability of Roche, because he's a bit busy, but yeah. Does anyone else have any other direction? Sorry, go on, David.
Yeah, Lee, just a quick question before we move on,
Yeah.
or before we end. Are any of you guys doing any work on internally on AI projects? Because I mean, I know we talk about machine learning and deepfake, and we talk about it from the context of data analysis and end-user behavioral analysis and that kind of thing. But are you running any programs yet internally that looks at AI and how to leverage it for, you know, enhancing business processes and that kind of thing? That's a question open to everyone on the floor.
Not on our side.
Yeah, so in my world and Sheldon's world, there's more around this topic than what I think is healthy at this stage in the game.
Yeah.
We've got engagements with the likes of Microsoft and AWS running, being part of their multinational forerunner groups of testing this, boards of business cases being framed, use cases being framed to be tested, being from Copilot, developing code for developers to, you know, let's get smart about our team session to whatever else someone can conjure up with. So we're definitely seeing a lot of activity in that regard. Sorry,
Okay.
Sheldon, you probably have a few better ones than what I've just spread out.
No, I think yeah, generally we are looking at it. We don't have anything. So I'm thinking of from a fraud perspective specifically, we don't have anything in place, but we are busy with implementations. The one is the extension of our fraud capability through FICO, which does introduce some modeling. Whether that's, you know, machine learning or artificial intelligence to the level that we want to get to yet, I don't think so. But we've also had a lot of engagements with external vendors and trying to understand what their machine learning and AI capabilities are, because it is a very high interest point across the bank, and fraud, there's a view that it can help us from a fraud perspective, obviously with data and stuff like that. So nothing, I would say from a fraud perspective, nothing implemented yet, but definitely in the pipeline. And then like Oscar said, yeah, across our other areas, there are a lot of interest for other use cases outside of fraud as well.
Okay. So we have in the foundation, we have a couple of use cases we're busy looking at building out, but they're more around our knowledge management and us telling the good news stories and the impacts in the environments, etc., etc. Not looking internally at our internal business processes like disbursements of funds kind of thing. But we do have some discussions going forward. Oscar, I'm very interested to hear as these things unfold and as the pilots and working groups, these forerunner working groups with AWS and Microsoft, how they pan out. Because we certainly have scheduled some time with Microsoft to talk about their Copilot, their security Copilot, and we're also, you know, looking. Well, we're busy running pilots on Teams Copilot and, you know, all the other pieces around it. So it'd be interesting to see how within the context of our very different businesses and business models, and how we can leverage these big suppliers like Microsoft and AWS to support, let's say, build out AI use cases within our business processes side of things. So, I mean, maybe Lee, just as a precursor to the next discussion, is for us to come back with our stories about how that is progressing, because I think you know, while the use cases that I uploaded into the forms questionnaire was more around, you know, how do we ensure that money that we are, let's say, gifting is being used in the right way, or that people are not maliciously, you know, getting money through process failure and phishing, that kind of thing. But then also on the other side is how do we use this technology, which our use cases are for really sorting out information. You know, we want to understand the nuances. Let's say we run a report on impact of microfinance in agriculture across, you know, West Africa. We want to and analyze and tell stories about that kind of that this massive amount of data that we have, and yet also looking, then that's our business side of things, and then also looking at our internal business processes, which is disbursement stuff, and then using open data to understand, so taking all this vast amount of data and then curating it in a way that enables us to actually identify some kind of fraud. There's this whole, certainly in my space, it's an untapped thing. It'll be a new thing that we would need to look at as we have these conversations with Microsoft and Amazon. So it might be a good option for just to tell our war wounds and war stories as we go forward. We've already picked up some, I think with this new type of technology and new approach, we'll always see some people who just don't really understand the risks or don't care for the risks. Like we had someone build a full-on AI engine in our production network environment that connects to the internet and was operational. It's like, guys, it's okay, you can play. We don't want to stop you, but please, don't just build this thing. Let's do it in a controlled way. Give you an environment, you can go and break whatever you want in there, just not in our production network kind of thing. Because we don't know how these models might learn, and we need to control and manage the data we feed these, all of these things. What are we connected to? Who has access? So there's a whole lot of stuff. So we've started focusing more on that side. How do we operationalize or prepare our business to get into this type of space? But it'll be interesting to see, again, just in the context of obviously of the fraud side of things, how are we leveraging AI in the context of our businesses, because it's really for business development and improvement, etc., and making sure we do it in a controlled and responsible way. Maybe just some suggestion for next time we meet.
Lee, you on mute there?
Yeah, sorry, thanks. Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea. I think obviously compliantly we need to be careful what we're sharing. No worries, Ed. Thanks, mate. See you soon. But yeah, I think there's some good practices out there we need to share and hear. I think it's important. Cool. Okay, no problems. That's a point for the next one as well, or the one after that. If we do KYC first. I want to consolidate there, guys. I think it's been productive, but I haven't shaped the customer journeys well enough. So I'm going to add, I think if I add narrative areas to each of the questions, then it would be less restrictive possibly, or enable you guys to freely Shakespeare your emotions into the customer journeys, which will make it a bit more real life. And I'll get some time with Darshan as well to shape that, not to put on anyone else, and I'll include Oscar's build as well of a customer journey model. I think that's fantastic. What you guys are not seeing in the background is everything that we build off the back of this. I'm slowly creating an insights document in the background of this, right, as a takeaway. You saw what I posted in Steve's secure code article, which is in there. The way the Alliances projects work is we're gathering bits of information as we go along, key points, key reference areas, considerations, etc., which are simply just your opinions or unreferenced as a whole. And it's just a useful takeaway document on top of what I've noticed with this holistic fraud framework is the theme of this Alliances project, but we're picking on so many different areas, right? We've already looked at, well, the first meeting was crime management. It's where we sort of incorporated that. The second meeting we went on to customer journeys and that area, and this one we're looking at AI and KYC, right? So this is clear to see that there's factors contributing to this, and this is where if I'm gathering it right, we'll have a holistic fraud framework, which is the outcome of it, but alongside that, a lot of narrative and areas and considerations and food for thought around it, which should help you guys. Obviously, you guys are getting the most benefit from it because you're contributing to it, but for anyone else who's on a similar journey along the way, we've actually captured a project and in my opinion, and my hope is to take a real good use case for us to, a business case, sorry, for us to reopen this project. If we've already covered X, Y, and Z, right, we can move on to other things and not revisit certain topics over and over and over. That's the aim of it. Okay. So yeah, I'll do a poll for the AI use cases for availability of that, and I'll chat with Roche about the RAN monitor session for the KYC bit as well, and I'll add the narrative to the form, and then if you guys want to revisit that, then feel free to do it. Does that all make sense?
All good.
Yep. Thanks.
Yeah.
Happy,
Also,
yeah.
I want to say welcome to Rian as well. Rian's catching up. I was not part of this at the very beginning, and for the purpose of what I was talking about there, Rian, on the landing page of the project, there's all the
Yeah.
previous sessions on there as well. When you've got a bit of time to spare, which is elusive for most of us, feel free to catch up with that as well, so you know where we're at.
Yeah, I had a quick browse, so that's why I wasn't totally unawares.
Cool.
But yes, it is one of the things that I love. So let's make this happen for the rest of the people.
Cool. Ideal. Anyone got any closing remarks? Anything to add? Are we all good?
All good.
Good
Thanks.
from my side. Thanks, Lee.
All good, thanks.
Nice one, gents.
All good.
Catch you soon. Yeah.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care.
Thanks,
You too.
everyone.
Cheers,
All the best.
everyone. Have a good one.
Bye.
Have a nice weekend.
You
Bye,
too.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.